want to take up where I left off. I didn't want to go long last week because, you know, I knew the pastor had a mighty word and deacon had a mighty lesson. So I'm bringing you the second part of it. In 1973, Congress passed the first fugitive slave laws. Amen. So we remember from last week that the slaves were put into total slavery until they could never get out. And what they did is, with the law, they made slaves the property of the slave owners, and they reduced the percentage of manhood that the slaves were. He was only 2/3% of man, so he wasn't a whole man. So therefore, he could not vote or do anything else that other men did. And just to show you how decadent our world is and our society is, the Supreme Court got involved in it. Amen. And what they said was, it passed the first fugitive slave law. The law left it mainly up to slave owners and their hired slave catchers to capture and return runaway slaves. In the meantime, though, because God always got hope somewhere. In the meantime, while they were tracking down slaves and beating them up and tying them up and dragging them back to who had owned them, a group of people rose up, a group of free blacks as well as anti-slavery whites, and they organized a slave escape system that came to be known as the Underground Railroad. And they felt like if they could just get to the north, because slavery was mostly in the South, because they needed us to pick their cotton and work in their homes and do all that other stuff. So if they could just get to the north, but the slave owners had people working for them that would go even into the north, and if they found the slaves there, they would bring them back. And they had put out posters everywhere. The people that were tracking them down, that would describe how the slave looked and who he needed to be returned to. And for the government, our ruling body, to take such a deplorable act against a human being is reason why we are like we are today. Amen. They passed one law in 1793, and that wasn't good enough. So then they passed another law that was very similar in 1850, that was still had their hands and their feet on the neck of black people. Amen. During this time, a man named E.R. Nance wrote a song, and it is called the Freedom Song. And I'm going to sing it for y'all. Amen. 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 And I want to say I love my church family. Amen. I love y'all for allowing me to sing. I know I'm challenged in that area, but I really thank you for putting up with me. Amen. Amen. Freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom in my soul. Talking about freedom. I want my freedom. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to live with Jesus